A squire is unproven and must be serious. Haliya plunges her gladiator into the water and ignites, fighting to provide the gift of its violence to the needful of the summest fate. Haliya, you fraud! Do something! Mortal imperative. Set thy hand aflame. We can't allow ourselves to be influenced by sentiment, because the sentiment might not be ours. Why doesn't he kill her? All else is light. I will not change into a person who accepts that. A clean light. For this reason, I have detached myself from Sir Vondom's command, pure light, and placed myself on errantry, not a good light. Come home, Haliya. The sum will not greaten because your squire will revolt. That must be in the sum. He has cast her out of the Free Company. She strikes at her night.
Listeners, welcome to the Magic Story Podcast, your guide to the planes, characters, and stories of Magic's multiverse, and sometimes even beyond. I'm your co-host, Harless.
And I'm your other co-host, Natalie. Listeners, oh my gosh. We just wrapped up an absolute tome of a story for Edge of Eternities. We got to see the Solthera system through 5 side stories and an 11-episode main story. It's a brand new setting, and we are not hurting for ways to explore it.
It was such a beast of a story that we couldn't tackle it on our own. We called in renowned voice actor Jesse Haliya to narrate audiobooks for every main story and side story. Always very exciting to get those too. Now, if you haven't listened to those, go ahead and do yourself a favor and check those out. He took an already phenomenal story and gave it the kind of performance it deserves.
Yeah, and Jesse just really has this amazing dramatic voice that gives these scenes the emotional heft they deserve. And he embodies all of these different characters, from humans to Kav, and I just loved listening to it.
Absolutely, I did too. Now, the main story of Edge of Eternities is all about choice. You follow multiple POV characters on their journey through the Edge, and for today's recap, we'll take a close look at one of those characters, Haliya, a squire of the Sunstar Free Company, and one of our preview cards for today. We'll meet the Sunstar Free Company later, but for now, let's check out her card.
Now, while we revealed one version of Haliya following the set's debut, she actually has 2 cards in the set. Let's meet Haliya, Ascendant Cadet.
Haliya, Ascendant Cadet, is a legendary human soldier for 2 generic, a green, and 2 white. Whenever she enters or attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Then, whenever one or more of your creatures with counters deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Absolutely beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, she's in a very pensive sort of pose where she's actually holding her weapon horizontally kind of in front of her, almost like an offering. And so I really like this pensive look that is also very, very powerful because we have the light shining down from above right onto Haliya. She's definitely spotlighted in the very center here.
Yeah, it gives a sense that she's giving everything for her cause, right? She's offering herself.
That's what she's doing.
She's offering her weapon. Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She also has some very sweet flavor text, and I'll read it for you. By the eternal and ever-flowing light, I swear myself to this cause. So Haliya is a member of the Summists, serving as a squire where she dedicates herself to her faith with honor, our second preview card.
Honor, a simple name for a simple card, costs 1 white mana. You put a counter on a creature and draw a card. 11 words and 2 numbers. Easy.
So in the card art that we're seeing for Honor, it's actually a really beautiful abstract piece where the background is really washed out with these bright, bright whites and sort of these neon reds, really, really colorful in the background. And then front and center, we have 2 humanoids, basically a knight and a person behind her who's kind of caping her in this very also abstract sort of geometric patterned like cape. And it's just like this very regal sort of moment backsplashed with this bright, it almost looks like a sun of sorts in the background. It's a very, very cool piece. I like the abstract of it.
Yeah, I love the neon colors. That neon yellow with the pink and the red are the brightest colors in the piece. And then the costuming on the humanoids is very blue focused, which of course stands out great against it. And you said it looked like the sun. And I feel like to me, it could be an explosion. It could be, it's just such a bright light but there's this moment of peace in front of it. Yeah. And I really love that.
It's almost in contrast to one another where it's like that could be an explosion, but they're taking this very like almost intimate moment where this person is like kind of knighting or caping another person. It's very cool contrast.
Yeah.
And so the very brief rules text leaves room for some flavor text, and I'll read it for you. With this mantle, you carry the duty to spread light, liberty, and the grace of Tamon 4 to the stars.
So Haliyah's card is obviously cool, right? This is going to be an absolute powerhouse, especially in Limited, but there's much more to this character than just a signpost uncommon.
So because Haliyah's card is just so cool, we'll be covering the story of Edge of Eternities through the eyes of Haliya of the Sunstar Free Company. She went through a lot in this story, so we have plenty to cover.
To provide some context for this story and answer all of our burning Sothera-related questions, we've called on a very special guest, Magic Story lead Roy Graham. Roy helms the creation of all the fiction and narratives of Magic, guiding everything from cards to comic books. Roy, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, Harless. I'm always happy to be here.
So, Roy, we're so excited to have you back on, not just because you're a fun guest, but also because this was an absolutely wild story. If you've only listened to the stories, you're going to want to go check out those web versions as well.
Edge of Eternities has done something really special. In the main stories, you make choices, which directs the story, and it gives you a very meta perspective on the narrative. We even got, drumroll please, the very first footnote in Magic Story. We'll hold for your applause.
So, Roy, I'm curious how this focus on choice and audience interaction kind of plays into the overall narrative of Edge of Eternities.
Yeah, this was an early conversation that the author Seth Dickinson and I had over format, actually, was how it started. We were talking about how most people read Magic Story on the web, on our website, and how that format might allow us to break rules and do things that we couldn't do normally if with a normal paperback. So the idea of having like interactive elements came out of it, and eventually as we started to work on the early drafts of the story, as Seth started honing in on the like narration and tone, those themes of the choice to format this as like an interactive narrative began to kind of infiltrate the story itself and become thematically significant and important, both in the overall plot and also in the like personal journeys of many of these characters. And there's something also about like resetting timelines and questioning free will that feels extremely science fiction.
Yeah, not only are there so many stories to be told in the Edge beyond this set, but there's so much going on, like you said, within the story itself.
So to help orient us with this topsy-turvy, time-twisting narrative, we'll be putting our focus on one character, Haliya, for today's recap. While we'll be seeing the story through her eyes today, you can get that full picture by reading the full stories or listening to those audiobooks.
So it's time to set a course for the Sothera system. Join us as we head into the Edge of Eternities.
We first meet Haliya as she is attending to her knight, Sir Vondom, aboard the Dawnsire. Their mission is to reignite the Sotheran supervoid, turning it into a star.
So Haliya is a squire for a knight, but it's not like your usual kind of knight. This is a free company of soldiers, ones who dedicate themselves to something they call the Bright Sum. So, Roy, we're curious here if you can offer some more context about the Sunstar Free Company and, by extension, the Summists.
Yeah, you said it. These are not normal knights. They're knights in space. We are following the Sunstar Free Company, who are a cause mercenary group, which means they're professional soldiers, but serving a larger organization of faith, in this particular case, the Summist faith, who worship something called the Bright Sum, a kind of calculus that you can put any choices, any actions that you might take into and predict how they impact the sum total of like heat and light and goodness in the universe. They are devoted to fighting against the literal heat death of the universe, the collapse of stars into black holes, and all that.
So we get a lot of interaction between Haliya and Vondom, especially as the story goes on. They have a really interesting rapport. Haliyah clearly holds him in high regard. She's his squire, after all. But Vondom doesn't see her as being lesser. He's clearly very invested in Haliyah as what he sees as the future of the Sunstar Knights.
So their routine is quickly interrupted here by a monoist attack. And the monoists are a self-described entropic death cult bent on growing the Sotheran supervoid. So, they're a cheerful bunch. And since the Dawnsire is trying to reignite the supervoid, they're trying to destroy the Dawnsire.
And they have a unique way of doing this.
What they do, yeah.
I'm going to hand it over to some of Jesse's narration from the story for a glimpse into this battle.
There is a hideous sound and a spine-cracking jolt. As it strikes the Dawnsire, the Ineviter deploys a cyst of altered space, a tactical event horizon, a Sherazade. For the next 10 minutes, the impact that will smear the Ineviter and everyone inside into a blast of metal and flesh is suspended, trapped on the horizon. They are in a vast brutalist girder set, the carbon chain bracing between the Dawnsire's inner and outer hull. Wounded and cogless spills crazed rainbow light all over them. Shipblood.
Man, I think you can really tell just in that little section of how quickly Seth begins to cook in writing this story, with some incredible things that are, I want to point out, entirely his invention. We were at work already on the world building, of course, when we started this story, but Seth really took what we had and ran with it. Here we have two of my favorite Sethisms in the story, which are the Ineviter, which is a ship that only launches if it knows that it can arrive at its destination. It echoes this the inevitability of crushing gravity and black holes and all these things that the monoists are about. And we also have the Sherazade here, a localized bubble of delayed impact for all of these monoist soldiers who have arrived on the ship, which of course is referring to Scheherazade linguistically, the character and narrator from 1001 Arabian Nights, who is telling these stories to delay her own death, to delay her execution at the hand of the Sultan. There's all sorts of those fun little narrative, linguistic, world-building nods throughout this story, and it was a delight to get to work with Seth on it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good writing when my literary analysis hat comes on from, me being an English major, and I'm like, oh, this weaves in consequence and all of this matters. And I kind of geek out about it. But that's how I know Seth was really good with this story. And it's in the wake of this initial strike that Haliyah and Vondom kind of leap into battle from here. So the monoists fight ruthlessly, collapsing themselves into miniature supervoids to tear at the Dawnsire. But Vondom is able to take control, and we see this super cool scene of him soloing a group of monoist paladins.
But there's another monoist, and that's Alariel in this fight. And when Haliyah tries to stop him, he ends up throwing a mini black hole into the fray and sends it straight through Sir Vondom's head.
Yeah, Alariel. He is one of the really central characters of this story. A monoist, one of these gravity-wielding, black hole-worshipping cultists, but he is beginning to doubt his purpose within the faith and doubt his willingness to sacrifice himself for the cause, which makes him a really interesting parallel to Haliyah, especially as the story goes on. He is meant to sort of exist as this foil for her.
Now, Alariel, who is just as stunned as we are by this, he escapes the ship, leaving a grieving Haliyah to reckon with what just happened. I mean, she just saw a black hole go straight through her mentor's head. And I think that would be startling, even if it wasn't your mentor, right? That's just not something you see every day. And she's interrupted when she learns Sir Vondom did not die.
So it turns out that Sir Vondom somehow survived getting a black hole thrown through his head, and he's got some theories on why this happened. So he believes that someone or something has essentially meddled with fate, making him live through an event that should have killed him.
Yeah, so this is the first time that Vondom and Haliyah interact with an object that's very important to this story and kind of central to all of it, which we come to learn is called the Endstone. It's a device that has the ability to manipulate probability, to nudge timelines and make things happen, as long as it has a chooser to decide through it to enact certain things. So remember that conversation I had about choice becoming more and more important to the story, not just a aesthetic choice, but a thematic one as well. Yeah, that's where this starts to happen.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the theme come together here, right? And it's I love how you phrased it, Roy, because it's like you need a chooser in order to determine what's going to happen, right? You are doing that as you are reading Edge of Eternities, right? So you kind of become the Endstone throughout the story. It's just really cool how that fourth wall is kind of broken down, especially in the beginning where you have all of these different choices that kind of directs where the story is going to go. So it's like choice is identity, and like you further solidify the identity of the story, and you further solidify the identity of yourself as you go forward into the story. It's just really, really cool thematic through lines. Kudos to Seth for doing all that. It's fantastic. So Vondom decides that to prevent any more alterations to fate, they need to find Alariel. So since he escaped on one of their ships, they just have to track him down and,
stop him, capture him, hold him for trial?
Well, Vondom is a little more set on killing him in the name of the bright sun. and Haliyah, who has always been devoted to her faith, begins to doubt her knight's judgment.
It was really important to us that Vondom and Haliya have this like genuine relationship that's based on mutual trust and love. I think it would have been easy to make Vondom a callous or selfish or arrogant character who takes Haliya's dedication to him for granted or even manipulates her, right? We've seen a lot of those characters already in Magic story, but there's something so touching about how these two characters genuinely love each other, which of course makes what comes later all the more tragic.
Yeah, it's very it feels very personal the way that it's written. Like if you've had, whether that's a mentor or even a family member who you have looked up to, and then you start to realize maybe their beliefs don't align with yours. For me, that really felt very honest and real in the writing, and I really, really appreciated it. All right, so they all take off chasing after a monoist and a fate-changing artifact. That's quite the story, and it's only the beginning of Haliyah's journey.
So Alariel escapes to Taro Dwend, and this is a remote Cov mining colony where he's picked up by the scrappy scoundrels Sammy and Tanook. At this point, we're seeing all of these plot threads start to kind of crash up against each other. And as Haliyah prepares to, as she believes, make things right, she gets some interesting information from Vondom.
Sir Vondom believes that his not death was a consequence of the Endstone, an object that is capable of manipulating fate. The Summists, seeing these kinds of creations as antithetical to their doctrine, have developed a strategy for dealing with it. But the problem is that strategy involves destroying everything around the object.
Yeah, as a strategy that works for dealing with a lot of problems, actually. If you totally vaporize everything in contact with the thing you're having problems with, you will have new problems. Probably. So we mentioned that the Endstone is capable of changing probability so long as it has like a user to act through. There's a really great metaphor in the story about this that treats it as like a switch at a rail yard, where you aren't capable of like changing the rail yard into a zoo all of a sudden, but you can make the tracks change from one direction to another, thus, changing the outcome of any number of scenarios, which is what Vondom and the Summists are so scared of falling into enemy hands.
So Alariel, willingly or not, has used this stone to escape, but the stone has a will of its own, and it's implying it wants to get somewhere. Vondom isn't willing to wait and see where that is. And he tells Haliya that he'll go down to the planet's surface, find the Endstone, and alert the knights of its position. And then she'll destroy everything, including her knights. But Haliya just got him back, right? And she isn't willing to give up on her mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. So she hatches a plan. Going out on her own, she plans to locate the Endstone and Alariel, sacrificing herself in the process. Now, eventually she finds where he's hiding, out in a ship called the Seriema. Now, this is Sammy and Tanook's ship. And so far, Alariel has been getting pretty close with these two scoundrels. So disarming him, Haliya takes command of the ship eventually. And this is a shock. I mean, it definitely was to me. She accomplishes this by killing Sammy and Tanook. She tells Vondom to fire on her position, but he refuses. And that hesitation, whether caused by the Endstone or Vondom's own attachment, gives the stone enough time to rewrite the timeline.
Yeah, I was worried that Sammy and Tanook were just dead there.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm glad to know that the Endstone feels the same, So when the timeline resets here, it basically omits their deaths. And as Sammy and their crew plan their escape, Vondom commands their ship to fire on Taro Dwend. And even as Haliya pleads for him to stop, to reclaim the stone without mass death, he just refuses.
So, Roy, forever question for you. Why do you love to destroy the hearts of your readers by leaving these cliffhangers between one episode and the next?
Yeah, that was a mean one. I'll own up to that. But, we'd already known that there was all this timeline rewriting. I assumed people would catch up.
Still, my heart's still recovering a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hateful in a way that is it definitely keeps
really
your
good
heart
storytelling
racing and it leads to really good storytelling. Yeah. But hateful nonetheless, Roy.
Yeah.
Now, the author, Seth Dickinson, gives this moment a real sense of emotional weight. The descriptions in this episode are incredibly grim. The summists wipe out countless Kov, firing on the city from orbit. This was one of the heavier pieces of writing I've seen in Magic Story.
Yeah.
Now, I want to play this particular section from the story to kind of get at the gravity of it. But if you are not in the headspace for it, feel free to skip ahead. You're going to want to go about 15 seconds.
One by one, the lasers service the targets. The point defense weapons set people on fire as they rasterize the crowds below. The Nuncios flash entire bodies to plasma. It's hard to say which is less merciful. And what are those burning Kov doing? They're trying to put each other out, lumbering around, gasping and beating each other with their claws. They throw themselves onto each other to snuff out the blaze, but all they do is make piles of burning bodies.
Yeah, this was a real moment. I just love how Seth brought it to life. Love and hate it at the same time. It's such a brutal moment, and also so important to the greater themes of the story, and particularly important to Haliya's character arc, right? Which required this witnessing with her own eyes this atrocity unfold in front of her. That is, of course, being done in the name of the system of beliefs that she's committed her life to.
Yeah, we talked about this with Laurel as well in that other episode earlier this season, where Edge of Eternities is dealing with these large-scale conflicts, and the reader ends up feeling a lot of the same emotions as Haliya, where we're left reeling from the fact that such a massive atrocity can happen supposedly under the guidance of the Sum. The Monoists and the Summists are not black and white. It's not good versus bad. It's not right versus wrong. They're both right and they're both wrong. And, the fact that choice becomes your identity and your perspective can change based off of the choices that you make. And, your story kind of unfolds from there and neither one is right or wrong. It's like really fascinating and fantastic storytelling here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really speaks to the fact that no matter where you start, you never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
And that our choices and how we choose to act really are what define us as an individual being and what our morals are and what our priorities are. And we all have to make those decisions for ourselves. I mean, it's very hard to just blindly follow something when you've experienced something like this moment.
Yeah.
So definitely feel for Haliya in this
and,
moment.
And I think Haliya is kind of going through this, right, throughout this story. And as we head into the final chapter of this story, basically anything and everything is on the table.
Up to this point, we've gotten oblique references to Sammy and Chinook's employer throughout the story, this mysterious metal man. Now, well, those of you who have been following Edge of Eternities marketing have probably guessed who that was. We finally get confirmation here. It's Tezzeret, who has found his way to the Edge.
Tezzeret. Tezzeret, our one returning character for this set. Tezzeret is so interesting here because he's been sort of perennially like bad lieutenant, a villain under the employ of much greater threats. And now he's sort of lone operative finally, and doing so in a place that is particularly well suited for his magical talents. I really like how Seth portrayed Tezzeret, and we worked together to make sure that the voice was right for the character, that he's the exact right level of like charming bastard is I guess how I would describe Tezzeret, if I can use that language. And he's so interesting in this particular setting because there's all sorts of things that are like magic-esque, so technologically advanced that it's effectively magic. But Tezzeret is the only mage here, right? The only one who thinks of himself that way. And the result is this fascinating and like often frightening portrayal of a character who is doing stuff that no one else from this setting understands.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you talk about him almost being like a henchman in so many other stories. Like I feel like the sentiment we're left with Tezzeret is often you'll all see, right? And then here he gets to come out from under that heel and kind of show us what we're all gonna see, which it's not scary.
Yep. Well, as we said, our favorite second in command is back here, and he's doing what he does best. That's crime. He's hired Sammy and Tanook to retrieve the Endstone in order to find who is the most powerful in the Edge. And there's this one section from the story that's just pure, unadulterated Tezzeret. So I'm going to have Jesse tell you all.
For Tezzeret, this is all a project of self-improvement. He has a bad habit, he says, of falling under the control of dark gods. This time it will be different. This time, he is going to look the Endstone's maker in the eye and know his would-be ruler before he's trapped.
Hey, it's not his fault. He's just so good at being second best. To confront whoever this is, they'll need to escape the Sothera system. And there's only one way out. Infinite Guideline, the central space station in the system.
So as Sammy hatches a plan to get out of Dodge with both their ship and their life intact, Alariel and Haliya finally have some time together without trying to kill one another, that is. They're both holding on to these beliefs that have grounded them for so long. Remember, Alariel is a monoist and Haliya is a summist. And those beliefs are clearly starting to fray in both of them. Each is convinced that they can convert the other, but it's unclear at this point if they still believe themselves.
Yeah, and on top of that, they're both like familiar with the abilities of the Endstone by this point. So there's all this great back and forth where they're talking about like how whether this is the object that's making them do these things, if they're already under the influence now, how they would know if like their choices are their own. And it's kind of the closest the story gets to directly addressing the themes is in very like classic sci-fi fashion, having two diametrically opposed characters get into a philosophical argument with each other.
Now, as Seriema's crew converges on their escape route, Infinite Guideline, both Haliya and Alariel put out a call to their respective allies.
And the idea is that they'll make the summists and monoists think that they're coming to claim the Endstone. That will get them to disengage long enough to avoid mass casualties and let the crew escape. But when they arrive, the crew sees something writhing, pulsing, otherworldly. And when it makes its entrance on the station, it becomes clear what it is.
Our favorite squiggly cosmic horrors, the Eldrazi, which some people theorized this was going to happen. Those people were right. The Eldrazi we know are native to the Blind Eternities. The Edge is on the other side of a vast, uninterrupted expanse of the Blind Eternities. So yeah, the Eldrazi are here too. And what I love about how the Eldrazi are portrayed in this setting is, in again, very cosmic horror tradition. They are this incredibly ancient, incredibly dangerous thing that only the most elite and wizened parts of the Edge know about. So yeah, I mean, it's just great. It's the Eldrazi. It's everyone's favorite. They're here to create all sorts of horrible havoc.
The Eldrazi are back.
Yeah, I feel like no matter where you are in Innistrad space, seeing an Eldrazi is just pure horror, right?
Yeah.
That's not something you want to run into.
Yeah.
We did a lot of adapting magic concepts to a science fiction setting throughout the Edge, right? And the Eldrazi were one of those things that didn't need a lot of adapting.
Yeah.
You could kind of just take them and be yeah, here you go. It's an inexplicable horror from beyond imagination.
Now, this Eldrazi drone tears through the station, taking out monoists and summists alike. As the two forces engage the Eldrazi and each other, Haliyah is met with an opponent of her own. Sir Vondom is here, and he wishes to reclaim his squire.
Yeah, but Haliyah has lost faith in Vondom's way of thinking, after everything. So here, for the first time, she is able to put her doubts into words. And here, she defies Vondom and the teachings of her faith.
But I do not believe the sum should ever pass through thousands of dead innocents on its way to greatening. I do not believe the dawn's light ever burns the helpless and the small. I must modify the sum through my own choice.
I think Haliyah's feelings here touch on something just very real. When something you believe in becomes the cause of something horrible, of course you're going to doubt why you ever believed in it. And here, Haliyah is realizing that the sum is something more than just rules to her. And by questioning the sum, she's embracing her own place in the world and choosing to defend life.
Yeah, Vondom decides that her defiance, though, cannot stand. And he attacks Haliyah.
Ugh.
The two battle, Haliyah struggling to hold her own against her former mentor. And caught in the crossfire of all of this, Alariel is nearly killed. But Haliyah, with the assistance of Alariel, is able to disarm and defeat her former knight.
This conflict is so great because Haliyah mentions it through the text that even as they're fighting, there's no hatred between them. They still kind of love each other, even as they're crossing blades. Of course, then you ultimately get the choice to disarm and defeat him rather than kill him, which is, of course, significant because Vondom's choice to kill the Kav of Taro Dwend but spare Haliyah is what resulted in her losing faith in him in the first place. Such a funny way to leave the faith ultimately is be spared against the tenets of what he should be doing if he was really following his orders.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, his affection for her overtakes his own rationale and his own, he doesn't, I don't think he sees that, right? I don't think he admits to that, but he is willing to put her first in some instances. And absolutely, that's going to break everything. And it's black or white when it comes to how they think, at least. And so
he just that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in that scene in Taro Dwend, when the Pale Star starts firing on the mining colony. It's so heartbreaking. Haliya is saying, like, you have to kill me too. Like, I've also been in contact with the object. I'm also compromised by it, and he refuses to. And that refusal to totally commit to this act of like this ultimately extreme act of summist violence is what breaks her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. With the Eldrazi routed and the way cleared, Tezzeret rallies the crew and makes the jump to another system, following the Endstone's guidance toward a brighter tomorrow. But once they arrive, things start to feel, well, Natalie, I've got a bad feeling about this.
And there certainly is. So something tears through the fabric of reality, and it's an impossibly perfect android. Tezzeret describes it as something like a planeswalker, and it's able to easily take the Endstone from them. And when Alariel is rendered unconscious, Haliya leaps into action, lopping off 2 of the entity's fingers, but getting gravely wounded in the process.
And that is where we leave this story. Haliya is wounded, the Endstone is gone, and Tezzeret is wondering what this mysterious entity could be, and probably if he should follow it, right? I never thought I'd say this, but after 11 episodes of a main story, I do want more as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not alone in that. I would love to go back to the Edge and hope we get to soon. I said earlier, this is only the smallest little corner of this setting, and there's so much still to explore. These characters that you've met over the course of all these 11 episodes still have so far to go, so much to do. And yeah, I mean, I can't wait to go back to the Edge personally.
I know. I'm going to ask you some questions you can't answer, like, will Haliya start a resistance group? Will Tezzeret ever be able to successfully accomplish crime on his own? And how close are the blind eternities to the Edge, especially in terms of like our orange metaphor?
Yeah.
Like, where is the blind eternities, like the little like white peelies on the orange? Lots of questions here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we won't get the answer soon.
Not yet. We saw the Eldrazi, we meddled with destiny, and we escaped the pull of a supermassive black hole. The story of Edge of Eternities has so much going on, and it was executed phenomenally.
Yeah, it's such a unique and wonderful story, and I'm so happy we were able to cover it with these audiobooks too. Again, I want to shout out Jesse's narration here throughout the audiobooks. He really took this story to new heights, and I'm looking forward to folks revisiting these stories through the Edge of Eternities season.
Absolutely. Now, Roy, as we prepare to make our jump into the Weft and head out for our next adventure, is there anything you wanted to cover from this set that we didn't get to?
Well, since you're asking, we have 5 side stories in addition to this main story, and this episode, as involved as it was really just focused on one part of what was a really sprawling and extraordinary story. So I guess I would just say, make sure you read it all, or listen to it if that's more your bag. Thanks to Jesse and Haliya for some really incredible narration. Shout out to the Magic World Building team, which knocked this absolutely out of the park, including Miguel Lopez, whose work I was so happy to talk about here. And yeah, hope to be back here soon.
Thanks again for joining us, Roy, and thank you for helping bring characters like Haliya to life, even if you almost killed her at the end there. Bring her back in the sequel, and we'll be cool.
If you want to play with your own copy of Haliya Ascendant Cadet, you can pre-order the set's products now from your local game store, online retailers like Amazon, and elsewhere Magic products are sold. Pre-release events run from July 25th through the 31st, so get ready to head into the stars.
Whether you're tuning in from Sister Secundi or Earth, thanks for joining us. We'll be seeing you shortly as we prepare to cover Lorwyn Eclipsed, Secrets of Strixhaven, and more in 2026, plus a few surprises for this year and beyond. Stay tuned, and as always, have a magical day.